Hello, everyone, and welcome to the future of threat prevention with Syxsense and Excalibur Data Systems. My name is Tabitha Ishman, and I'm the marketing manager of Excalibur Data Systems. And before we get started, I just wanted to share a few webinar logistics. So today, the webinar is going to be recorded, and the recordings will be sent via email to all the participants tomorrow. And we'll answer questions at the end in a Q&A session. But you can ask questions anytime during the presentation just by tapping or typing them into the chat box. And so I'm going to go a little bit and tell you about Excalibur Data Systems. You can switch the slide for me, Jean. Thank you. So we are a boutique integrator of ITSM and enterprise service management solutions, and we were founded in 1998. And since then, our company has just been evolving and growing our services ever since. So we do have two headquarters, one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then the other in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. And we've been working with long-term strategic partners to achieve the best outcomes for our customers. And that's why we're really excited to work with Syxsense today and collaborate on this webinar. So if you're interested in reading more about our partnerships, you can just visit our website. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jean Kim to tell us a little bit more about Syxsense and then jump into the presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Tabitha. I'm really excited about presenting to the Excalibur customer base, and really excited about the partnership that we have with your organization. We think we have a lot of great information for you today and some potentially really good things to look at when it comes to the future of security for your organizations. So with that, I'm going to stop my webcam and go ahead and just have my presentation going only. And so at Syxsense, our goal for our customers is to help IT manage and secure everything, everywhere, all the time from the cloud. And the way that we do that is by furnishing simple yet really powerful tools to protect organizations' environments and help better manage those organizations utilizing our tools and the automations that it provides. And so before we go into the future, I think it makes sense to have a conversation about what's been happening and give some context about what organizations and really the world is experiencing when it comes to cybersecurity. Just in 2019, there was nearly $6 trillion spent on protecting enterprises for cybersecurity. And the reality is that this amount of money is probably only going to grow because we see an acceleration in terms of the breaches and security vulnerabilities that organizations are facing. We all know with the COVID-19 pandemic that the world has changed, and the parameters in which we've dealt with in the past around remote workers and protecting organizations within a single office or multiple offices with firewalls has all changed. And so we can expect the tools that hackers and people that have nefarious actions and intentions are going to change as well. Now, to give some additional context, the average cost of a data breach is about $150 million with over 2 trillion in total for 2019 alone. And the frequency in which these attacks are occurring has also been accelerating, now reaching about a 39-minute between attacks. And so, these organizations, whether it be small or large, around the types of businesses that they're approaching, they're not just large enterprises, they're getting all the way down into small and medium-sized businesses. And it's interesting to note that 64% of all companies have experienced some sort of web-based attack. 62% have experienced phishing and social engineering attacks. and 59% have experienced malicious code and botnet attacks. And so, this number, again, is only going to accelerate, and the difficulty is going to be in how you protect your enterprise, especially in this remote, this era of remote workforce. Interestingly, this weekend, last Friday, IBM conducted a study of 25,000 people. And of those, 54% of them would like to work primarily from home, and 75% of them would like the option to do it on an occasion. And they went so far as to ask, once organizations open, what would be your preferences then, right? And so when businesses come back online and offices open back up, still 40% of them said that they feel strongly that their employers should offer a remote work option. So what does that mean for your organizations and how you protect the data and the security requirements of those end users, right? Now, all the while, the number of connected devices has only increased, right? Whether they be IP-based devices in your organization or now in this remote workforce era, what are the devices connected to your home-based workers' environments, right? What sort of new attack vectors could, become available, based on exposing corporate assets to home networks? So these are all really good questions that we need to have answers for. So in a survey conducted of CIOs, there were a number of things that we asked about what's causing breaches, but also the level of confidence levels that CIOs have regarding their security stances. And so in the survey, nearly 40% found that there were software vulnerabilities that were causing these sorts of breaches. Another 37% or so were based on web-based applications, whether it be SQL injections or cross-site scripting. The use of stolen credentials and logins, encryption keys, still a very large problem, and the exploitation of lost or stolen assets still accounts for nearly 25%. Now, when CIOs were asked what their levels of confidence were when it came to just the pure visibility of these risks, not necessarily whether they were able to do something about them, only 49% were confident that they had even visibility around what was potentially vulnerable in their environments. And so there is a very high rate of increased focus within security and compliance, 81% in fact. So, when you look at also the collaboration that's required between your IT, kind of the management team supporting your users, and the security teams, they didn't feel overly that there was a lot of collaboration in that regard, right? So you have typically a security team that's doing scanning for vulnerabilities, but then the actual actions that have to occur in order to protect your environment get pushed down to a different team, typically the IT management team. And so some of the things that we want to talk about today is how you can mitigate these risks and make maximal use of the resources that you have, right? And so one of the high level risks is the issue associated with zero-day patching. And our recommendation and the industry's recommendation really is to patch things that matter to your organization, right? And so 40% of all breaches are caused by known software vulnerabilities. Now, by creating a smart patching strategy that focuses on the things that matter to your organization that you're vulnerable for, you can maximize the effectiveness of protecting your environment, right? And by having an automated patch strategy and an automated patch solution, you can mitigate these risks in basically as soon as the manufacturer releases those patches. So the point here is to pick what matters, understand what your vulnerabilities are, and go after those patchings first, right? And so another component is understanding what you are vulnerable for. And it's not just patch vulnerability. It's no longer just about the inoculation or the preemptive steps that you can take for patches alone. There are a host of other things that causes vulnerabilities in an environment. So we've all heard of the RDP port vulnerability. There are insecure passwords. There's ineffective user account policies. There is lack of adherence to security compliance standards. I heard just recently, there is this password trick that the users are employing to get to their favorite password. So if you have a policy, for instance, where you have to not use the same password you've used in the last 10, well, one of the things that users have been doing now is basically resetting their passwords 10 times to get to the 11th time so they could go back to the password that they just had, right? And so being able to identify those sorts of things along with understanding the security stance and understanding the vulnerabilities around the open ports and whether the firewalls are up, all very important. Another area of concern is brute force attacks, right? And so there are so many stories of the DDoS incidents. Um, you know, by you employing brute force attacks, especially in a remote worker environment, you know, hackers can jump from any device within a home and then onto a corporate network via a lateral attack, right? And so, what you can do to reduce the success of these brute force attacks is to, again, look at user account policies, make sure your local accounts are in the right credentials, that weak passwords aren't being employed. And so by looking at those and having a solution that's going to scan and identify these things will give you a much better understanding of your attack surface. The fourth thing that we think organizations should look at is antivirus, right? And so devices that typically in the past accessed your corporate resources internally via VPN are now doing so from home, right? And so how do you make sure that your home-based workers, your remote workforce, are now running the most up-to-date virus pattern files and even have their firewalls up and running or have it activated? And so it becomes much more difficult given a remote workforce, and they may or may not be logging into the corporate VPN for policy-based updates. With resources so much more easily available and everyone migrating to the cloud, you find that this sort of attack could occur much more easily given the access to cloud applications and the lack of visibility that organizations might have for the remote workforce. And last but not least, there is a challenge for organizations when something does go wrong, right? When that breach does occur, how do you stop that immediately? And one of the things that we recommend is to make sure that you have a solution that is going to be able to immediately quarantine a device, even if those devices are at home, so they're not able to access your corporate resources, whether they be in the cloud or via VPN. And so by mitigating the spread of that and isolating that device, even if they're remote, it's going to be very important to ensure that it's isolated and then you're able to remediate that in very short order. So the future of threat prevention from Syxsense and perspective is really to marry the world of vulnerability and threat management with patch management. Up until today, there have been tools to help organizations manage their environments and manage security patching, which can prevent a breach from occurring. But the issue is that these tools don't do anything to proactively protect you from security threats and when they do occur, right? And likewise, vulnerability and threat management tools can tell you what gaps you have in your environment, but they don't tell you, but they don't have the tools to fix those gaps. So at Syxsense, we believe there's this great opportunity to reduce infrastructure and have an all-in-one solution by providing both the vulnerability and threat management and all of the patch management capabilities and the remote management capabilities that you need from a systems and ongoing maintenance perspective. And so Syxsense is really happy to announce that we've created the first IT management and security solution that combines vulnerability scanning, patch management, and EDR capabilities all in a single cloud console. So accessible anywhere, all the time for anyone to use. With the insight that we're able to provide for health across the network, it really helps organizations protect their environments, not just on an inoculation basis and in advance, but also in real time. And so Syxsense Secure, the product that we're going to demo for you today, provides this real-time capability to both look at both OS vulnerabilities and the security weaknesses, but also be able to do something about it, and that it being a breach or a hacker attack as it's happening, right? And so we combine this capability of security scanning capabilities as well as the vulnerability scanning for deployment management of the typical IT capabilities an organization needs. So some of the things that we think organizations will require is in this combined solution is, of course, the ability to scan for software vulnerabilities, but also to look at compliance violations and open threat vectors, right? Certainly have to furnish OS patches and third-party patches as part of that capability. When organizations move up to the next version of Windows, which are offered in feature updates, we offer that capability as well, right? Additionally, to be able to automate these functions across both the IT and security teams is extremely important. So once a vulnerability is identified, the process for remediation can actually occur immediately, all on a single platform. The ability to look at brute force attacks, understand and prioritize security risks, and as well as be able to lock down insecure passwords and ineffective user account policies are all capabilities that we know organizations need in a solution. So today, our solution is all architected on a single platform that's proven for a better part of a decade that supports Windows, Mac, and Linux devices, as well as Windows servers. So you can manage all of those devices from a single console without multiple infrastructure, more products to train on, more products to support, licensing issues. Syxsense has two products, Syxsense Manage, which provides hardware and software discovery, patch management, software distribution, and Syxsense Secure is a more security-oriented product that we're going to show you today that gives you all of the capabilities in Syxsense Manage, but also the security components of a vulnerability and threat management solution and EDR capabilities. With that, I want to introduce Jonathan Cassell, who is our Senior Solutions Architect, who'll do a quick walkthrough of the solution and give you some examples of things to look for within a security solution. So with that, I will hand things over to John.
Thank you very much, Gene. You can go ahead and send me presentation rights.
There you are.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, just let me know if you can see my screen.
We can.
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. Okay, so just want to point out before going forward, all you're looking at is a web browser in full screen, nothing to host on premise. Major advantage given, of course, today's climate 86% of US and European companies, for example, report major network disruptions, spikes, concerns, just for the fact of having to use their on-prem products still, and of course support all the machines outside, having to connect back, VPN. Well, for any of the feature set that I'm about to show, as Gene mentioned already, of course, cloud-based within Microsoft Azure, nothing additional to host on-premise, and of course, this is definitely an easy, great option for even virtual corporations. Before I jump forward, just want to point out different options for implementation. For Windows-based devices, of course, a prepackaged MSI. Contrary to some other solutions, you don't have to keep it up to date. Once the service is on the machine, it can self-update. And of course, being an MSI, fully standardized option, you can always push through another solution, even group policy. Separate installer for Mac, that gives you the same feature set. And another client called our VREP allows for additional functionalities such as discovery on-premise, the ability to manage Linux devices over SSH, wake on LAN functionality, and even a built-in proxy server for maybe particular servers that are on-premise that don't have internet access. We can still patch them. Now, jump straight into the inventory. I'm going to cover a few remote assistance options, but I would also just like to quickly go over the different options for organization. This may be particular, and of course, every organization is different. Different site containers to represent different site locations, maybe potentially different sub-customers for a particular console, even different network segments. Each one of these can be pre-populated with different IP ranges so that even if machines are discovered, they'll fall directly into their site. No additional need to go ahead and reorganize. For targeting, whether it be through a patch deploy task or for pushing out feature updates or to deploy software, you can leave it dynamic using the inventory data that we've already pulled back, such as which machines have a certain version of Windows 10, or maybe which machines are running out of disk space, health information, like which machines may still have critical updates required, even machines that are currently connected, as well as devices that do or do not have software installed. Queries allow you to leverage this inventory data and instead dynamically look at the listings so that you don't have to pick and choose. You can leave this down to a particular container that you can even right-click and simply deploy out to. Again, if you want to go ahead and schedule this even nightly, for example, this would ensure that, well, whenever the recurrence is set to happen, to elapse, well, that you may actually have a different listing going forward. And this ensures an easier method for not just patch deployment, but even for deploying software as well as for checking for vulnerabilities. And a static list is available as well, so that you get to pick and choose which exact machines you're after. Any of these containers can also be set up so that if there's one single console for an organization or for multiple organizations, this would ensure that particular users that have access to the console can only see certain devices. So these can certainly be set up for delegation of access as well. To go into a few of the devices here, of course, I mentioned we do have online connectivity. Doesn't matter if the machine's on-prem or off-prem. As long as it's physically networked, it'll check back directly to the site and allow you to perform any other option for it. Additionally, Health at a Glance allows you to see, based on the color coding, where each device is at. Now, you don't have to go into each individual machine. We don't have to generate reports, although, of course, both options are available. This allows you to see that health at a glance and instantly see if, again, a device does require critical updates, high severity, any severity for that matter, as well as even just to check our environment's okay. For any additional details, as well as all the remote assistance options, you can always go directly to an individual machine. Remote control is a breeze. It simply opens up a new tab within the web browser and allows you instant access to that machine. Since the agent runs as the system profile, not particular to any user profile, it wouldn't be the experience like with remote desktop. So rest assured, you'll have access to the screen. Again, remote assistance, not remote control, so you can still assist the end user, as well as if any UAC prompts happen to pop up, no restrictions on rights and permissions. Before I jump into patch management, just want to also point out all the different remote tools. Now, some tools force you with remote control to have to take control of the screen just to send some files down. These device tools can get granular in terms of permissions, but you can instead access those types of features on the side instead. Again, the ability to push a file down without the need to bug the end user for that, maybe to troubleshoot an event viewer, kill a process, change a service status. You want to get more advanced with WMI queries, you're more than welcome to, as well as even a remote PowerShell option for remote terminal. Additionally, a feature that you can run at any time Should you suspect maybe a malicious process is spreading, I'll get into proactive options in a little bit, but this is the on-demand ability to go ahead and quarantine a machine from the internal network as well as from the internet. Should something be spreading, or maybe you just want to do this as a safeguard option, quarantine the device, patch it, remote control, assist the end user, and then go ahead and de-quarantine. When the device is quarantined, it will still check into the cloud. Although it can't reach any other location, you do have the ability to remove it and then continue on working. To go through patch management, some tools just kind of give you an overall view and you don't really know which particular updates. Will rest assured, with every individual device, of course, this is a very simple approach of looking at one machine. We call it device-centric. We do have the option to simply look at which updates are required. We can select all, or we can get granular with the listing of which updates we know need to be deployed. And the action item is on bottom. Now, with every patch deploy, you get to address 3 overall questions, and any deviations, just simply create a new task. It's that easy. Although we can certainly scale up so that you could simply deploy to all machines through the use of one task. Those 3 questions are: where would you like to target? What do you want to do? In this case, it's going to be which patches do you want to deploy? And when do you want to run it? As well as some additional options for reboots and the install method, which I'll get to at the end. If you want to scale up, all the containers that I mentioned earlier are easily selectable, as well as you can scale up to additional machines from the list. The next option is which patches you'd like to choose. Now, this is a very interesting list as well, so I'm going to go ahead and click Modify to show the full content section. From the patches section, many different options that are provided, not just so you're either deploying all or you have to get specific. In fact, overall, when it comes to where a patch is coming from, our in-house content team does plenty of research daily, as well as always will pull in updates if they are rolled out that same day. Within a few hours, testing will be taking place on any of the patches that are from either the vendor or from Microsoft directly, as well as full detection logic is included. This ensures that even if you go to a device and say patch everything, maybe you haven't checked for what the device requires yet, a scan will still take place because we never want to go ahead and blindly deploy patch content. This ensures that we will accurately detect as well as remediate only what is necessary. Similar to how Microsoft has handled in the past as well, although a little bit different now with Windows 10, we do keep track of patch supersedence. Again, no additional insider research is required to find out which update needs to be deployed in which order. That is always handled from the top level, as well as you'll be validated. Multiple severity options, whether by the industry by CVSS score or from the publisher, because sometimes they don't always match, as well as Syxsense also provides the SIX score, which takes into account multiple other areas of vulnerabilities, such as updates that may be actively exploited, whether the update and vulnerability itself is publicly aware to the industry, it's being weaponized, or whether or not countermeasures already exist, such as the patch itself. Some prepackaged filters are also included by default, such as third-party patches, which again, the content team is always supplying, and always up to date, same day. Even Microsoft Patch Tuesday, within just a few moments in the same day, you will have access to all the patch content that Microsoft has released, and rest assured, for overall functionality, they've all been tested. If they're in the list, Microsoft didn't get it wrong. On the left-hand side, if you'd like to group updates, that is always an option, although it is a specific avenue. It's not a requirement, like with products like WSUS. You can create a group if you want to, maybe for change management. But you could also create filters instead, just like with the inventory. Maybe just look at updates that may have a certain severity, as well as maybe just looking at every patch, excluding a particular update like Java. Those can be easily set up, and they would work perpetually for you, so you never have to change it unless your specifications change. As well as I mentioned with supersedence, you could simply select all updates, include superseding, so it goes both directions of the vulnerability chain. So again, no additional research is required, such as, which updates do we have to deploy first? This option would allow the content as well as the functionality of the deployment task itself to include in either direction to make sure that that machine is patched as quick as possible. The third question of when can be addressed for any task in the list, whether it be for patch deployment, patch scanning, software deployment, and I'll quickly go through the other tasks as well when we go through this wizard. Multiple options, especially for remote connectivity. The architecture of the agent itself does allow real-time connectivity. It's not policy-based like with some other solutions where you kind of have to cross your fingers, hope and pray that something's going to run. It will run at the times that you specify. However, if machines are not online at that time, a standalone task, whether you choose to start now or later, allows for missed task functionality. You can even set weekly refresh intervals, especially for machines that may be remote, so they pick it up when they are ready. And even if you want to take the extra step to safeguard certain hours of the day so that the client will not pick up at certain times, such as during the workday, you can set blackout hours for that too. Another common option, especially for servers, as well as any machine or any environment, I should say, because every environment's a little bit different, whether you would like to limit the duration of that deployment. Maintenance windows can be instead used and leveraged to not only provide multiple levels of recurrence, like minutes, daily, weekly, monthly options, or a certain week of the month, but a specific duration to that deployment. How long is that deployment going to run for? Or I should say, how long do you want it to allow for, such as maybe outside business hours to ensure it will be completed before the next workday. These schedules can be supplied towards any other task as well. They're simply calendar schedules, and you can link any task to them, so they'll run perpetually for you on those schedules. One of the most important questions with patch management is, of course, downtime. Now, if you go through the wizard and you don't select an option, it will always be suppressed by default. However, if you'd like to go ahead and opt in, you can choose maybe the most widely used option of only for the targets that require it, although there's some other options here to select as well. And of course, to validate with the end user with a custom message, company logo, initial timer, so how long until we time out before it reboots the machine automatically, which I'll get into in just a moment. You can actually set different schedules for when the reboot would actually be approved to push down. It doesn't have to be right after the deployment, as well as deferring with or allowing the end user to defer with snooze options, so that you kind of meet in the center. You're still forcing it upon an end user because a reboot is necessary to really seal and prevent that vulnerability from occurring once the machine has been rebooted, but you give them some time to defer. And the last option with patch deployment is to either install or uninstall. So you can select whether you want to uninstall particular problematic updates, which again, not every tool provides. And it's the same process. All you have to do is just change the direction on the last step. Once a task has been kicked off, it'll be added to the task list, where again, you do get real-time functionality based on that task if it's in progress. Now, contrary to some other solutions where I mentioned earlier, you may just get an overall summary and overall kind of status, but not really granular information on if you have any failures, like machines are offline or maybe a device runs out of disk space. You will get that information within every single task from the sub-devices view. So if any devices have been targeted, you have a listing of how many updates you've approved to deploy, how many were actually deployed, did a device need a reboot after the deployment, as well as the result statement and the date of completion. Many different result statements can also apply, such as, again, machines running out of disk space. If an end user tends to keep deferring the reboot, you won't be left in the dark. You will have information based on that. As well as, again, if any task is in progress, you'll have real-time visibility about every 5 seconds, letting you know where every single device target's at. And that goes for every task that is provided with Syxsense. Discovery, feature updates, software deployment, patch scans, deployments. Although a patch scan is optional, it's always recommended to get a baseline, but as I mentioned earlier, you could go straight into deployment, as well as the security scan, which I'll cover in just a few moments, and even staggered reboots. So if you want to choose a different time to reboot, it doesn't have to be during the deployment phase. It can be maybe at the end of the work week. And the next section down is for vulnerabilities, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time in here discussing the definitions that Gene had mentioned earlier in his slide deck. This would include other areas, not just patch content, in which Syxsense is detecting for any potential attack vectors. Again, any threats, vulnerabilities overall. This wouldn't be just for patching. This is for other areas such as malicious processes, peer-to-peer binaries, Windows policies. Gene mentioned the lockout policy and password policies that can be set. Well, some of those, of course, can be pushed through group policy, but that doesn't mean that it's the right option, such as password complexity requirements and whatnot. With the ability to check both local policy as well as what's being forced from the domain, as well as every single definition here does have different severities, letting you know exactly how severe that particular vulnerability is. The alerting section allows you to set up alerts to be proactively notified based on different triggers, different monitors that you want to look for. And this would include anything from process monitoring to resource usage. Simply go to alerts, add your alert monitor. I have a few examples in here, such as Fortnite, very popular video game. Not necessarily a security concern, but given that everyone's now working from home, it may be a necessity to check for that, and of course ensure that they are actually working. An interesting piece about this particular game is that you don't have to actually install it, but maybe you want to still check for the process. So although inventory may not show it, we want to see if the process is running, and then we may want to do something about it. We don't have to specify a schedule, simply a frequency of how often we want to check. Do we want to get notified and just simply be audited about the situation? Kill the process. We can even quarantine the devices automatically if we see this take place. And of course, the end user would be notified, and you would have the alert monitor letting you know that a machine has been isolated. And you can also pick and choose maybe with specific devices. It doesn't have to be for the whole console. You can segment out maybe particular groups if you have certain departments that tend to, well, in this case, play games more often. Of course, any other malicious processes can also be supplied, such as keygens, trojans, anything that you want to look for. The real-time section leverages that same real-time architecture as mentioned earlier to instantly ask a question across all connected endpoints and easily get it answered. Not just for a query, but you can also do something about it based on that particular scriptlet, such as checking the Windows firewall status on all connected machines, again, regardless of where they're at. It's not limited to just on-premise. As long as they're checking in, we can verify the firewall status within seconds and easily address it. Now, we may not want to disable the firewall, but for any devices that have it disabled, we can also take it the other direction to enable it again. The same goes for local user accounts, administrators, the ability to change password, disable the user. You can check processes on demand if you'd like to, finding software installs, as well as the easy ability to go ahead and uninstall it. Maybe Chrome may not be necessary or desired to be on the machines, or maybe other processes, software such as Steam maybe. Or again, something maybe more security related, something that you've seen on one device, you want to go ahead and check for the rest to see if it's also applying and potentially spreading to other endpoints. If it is, let's go ahead and uninstall it. An easy option to reverse it. And on the right-hand side, a number of other options such as resource usage to check free disk space, RAM, CPU, and even see where machines are checking in from. Now I just have 2 data centers, but rest assured, if machines are actually outside the environment, you would see pinpoints all across the map, letting you know those external IPs and where they're checking in from. Now going down to reports, a number of prepackaged reports that are offered by default. Before you run the report, you can of course choose who you want to run it on, whether it be particular customers that are in the console or particular environments, any other site, department, however you set that up, as well as which content. Simply click the report. You can actually schedule it out automatically. So I'm going to run this one on demand, but it doesn't have to be ran on demand anytime. You can schedule with similar options to maintenance windows, daily, weekly, monthly, and have it sent out via email automatically. Doesn't matter if it's to you or to another party, to an auditor directly. You can set up as many schedules as you want. This particular report is going to show us outstanding data across the environment. I didn't supply any filters, so it's just going to be for all of my demonstration machines. At the top, we have a breakdown of the devices that are outstanding because we've left information outstanding. We haven't patched these devices, it's just a demo environment. But then all of the additional information below. If we have 66 outstanding updates, what are those packages and when were they last detected? Various save formats are also provided, not just PDF, but various Office formats, HTML, text, multiple data formats such as CSV, as well as different image formats if that's also preferred. This goes for every report, even if the report is scheduled. And another report I'd also like to highlight, a number of compliance reports such as SOX, HIPAA, PCI. I'm going to run the PCI report. This provides both sides of the spectrum, not just the outstanding data, but pertaining to the different deployments as well. So what is the success? My overall level of compliance, of course, it's demo environment, so I do have some machines outstanding for that particular reason. 80% compliant, breakdown of publisher severity, industry severity, the non-compliant devices and the reasons why. as well as what auditors also really like to see are the vulnerabilities that are outstanding, the particular updates, and what vulnerability is still a potential attack vector. Software distribution is always provided as well to deploy various file formats like MSI, EXE, script formats, zip and ISO, and a few formats for Mac as well, like DMG, APP, and PKG, with the same scheduling options as patch deployment, as well as feature updates, which are actually a level of security concern, especially lately, even though Microsoft has deferred a few of their releases, given that they were about to expire in May, such as 1809. They have deferred them for some time, but still, if a feature update is not pushed and maybe machines are a few versions behind, they don't actually have the ability to deploy the latest security updates, and they are a major vulnerability. So the easy ability to not only check, but also push feature upgrades based on whichever content and version you want to go ahead and supply, it's a very easy method to get that scheduled up. With regard to user accounts, there are a number of options as well, such as roles and permissions, and even security scope as mentioned earlier. Whichever containers you'd like to set up, you can supply access to only those machines from this user. So you can go, again, roles and permissions for who, what they get access to, as well as who they can go ahead and manage. Tech support is always provided at the top, as well as live chat, including alerts and notifications, maybe from our content team, as well as from tasks you may be supplying, an integrated help guide, as well as a number of different configurations if necessary, such as setting proxy servers, branding the reports, setting your default reboot options, device auto archive. Based on inactivity, we can go ahead and just archive the machine after a set amount of time. The ability to clone devices and still ensure that when they do check in, they'll be unique, as well as location security for geolocking the console, and SSO via Okta and Azure AD. Okay, Gene, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, John. I'm gonna take control back of the presenter. And so hopefully everyone can see my slide. So at this point, I'd like to just close by thanking everyone for attending the webinar. And as you saw, Syxsense really is the only provider that offers a solution that combines the scanning capabilities of a security and vulnerability scanner with the deployment and management capabilities of an IT management solution. It's all delivered from the cloud without infrastructure to install and the ongoing headaches of managing your management system, the agents, the deployment sites, staging servers, and what have you. I'd welcome everyone on the webinar to download our trial. Very quick and easy to get set up. It's one of the things that we take very much pride in terms of how simple it is to set up and use, but how powerful the capabilities are. So if you go to the URL on the screen at syxsense.com/excalibur-syxsense-trial, you'll get a full 14-day trial for up to 50 licenses, and that's across any Windows Server, Linux, or Mac device, and manage your environment and take a test run. Most customers are able to get the trial up in as little as 15 or 20 minutes. So with that, I'll hand things back over to Tabitha. Over to you, Tabitha.
Yeah, thank you, Gene. We weren't able to see the link on the webinar. We're seeing a white screen right now, but
here.
if any of the attendees are interested, that link is also on the website right here under Partners and Syxsense, and that link is right there. So I'm going to move into a few questions that came in while you guys were presenting. Great presentation, by the way. So one of the questions from our attendees is, how is Syxsense licensed?
So I'll take that one. So Syxsense is licensed on a per managed seat basis. One of the cool things we think about our solution is that we don't make any differentiations, as a lot of vendors do, between servers and PCs in terms of licensing. So a very simplified licensing structure. All you have to do is count the number of devices that you'd like to manage. and that'll be the device count in terms of licensing. So if you have, 500 PCs and 100 servers, there's just 600 devices to be managed.
Okay, thank you. Another question that came in was, how does Syxsense handle patch dependencies and supersedence?
I can take that. So for all the Windows-based updates that we're already providing, that is already handled based on the vulnerability chain and how we kind of structure the patch content. So as mentioned earlier, rest assured there is an easy checkbox that can be selected in any patch deployment to handle both sides of the vulnerability chain. Prerequisites, as well as maybe some updates were chosen that may require a new one. As long as that checkbox is, well, checked, then it will include the newer updates so that there's no additional deployment, no additional information to research.
And John, this question also might be for you. How quickly is patch content made available on Syxsense when it's released by Microsoft? I know that you did touch on that earlier. And then what about third-party patches?
Excellent question. Overall, it will be same day, so within 24 hours. However, we do have an in-house content team, so we're not dependent on any third party to provide this to us, other than, of course, the vendor themselves. And we get it in literally just within hours. So once it's released, especially with Patch Tuesday, I've seen it as quick as 3 hours turned around. And of course, this does not just include just us taking the content and providing it directly. This includes detection logic, as well as full testing of every binary on every OS that is supported.
And what OSs do you support?
Oh, so I'll take that. Windows, Mac all the way to the current version, Windows Server all the way to the current version, and Linux. John, I'd refer to you, but is it 60 or 70 or 80 different versions of Linux?
Yeah, the different variants would include CentOS, Ubuntu, Red Hat, Oracle Enterprise, SUSE, Debian, all the major variants that the industry typically uses, as well as, of course, many different versions and revisions.
Awesome. Okay, so those were all the questions that came in so far. So I am going to end the webinar, and thank you all for joining us today. And we'll look forward to seeing you on another one of our webinars with Syxsense. Thank you, Jean and John.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.